Intensive Care by Valerie Ryan. Read by Fiona Tuohy. A man enters through the automatic doors that open into the A&E department. Mud and oil streaks mask his features. He wears a fireman's dark uniform with fluorescent stripes, but the top is hanging upside down from his waist, the sleeves touching his ankles. The Spanish word for fireman, bomberos, is blurred on his t-shirt by dark black-red patches. He half coughs, half clears his throat as he stands by the entrance. Despite the fans whirring in the waiting area, the stench of smoke is everywhere, but he doesn't notice. He carries the smell himself. In the waiting room outside the emergency department, figures in green scrubs weave in and out through the throng. Porters push patients in wheelchairs in the direction of the main hospital. Some people sitting on the floor hold their heads in their hands. Others pace up and down. There is a background sound of sobs, the rustle of paper, mobile phones ringing, the bleep of alarms, and nurses, doctors and police talking to one another. The firefighter navigates the crowded room. He chooses his path in a slow, deliberate manner, as though it matters where he steps and who he walks around. He scans the area, and his gaze pauses at the sign for the intensive care unit, to the left at the back of the department. He approaches the entrance to the small unit. 2 children, a middle-aged man and a grandfather figure all stare up at him, dark eyes against olive skin. They are squeezed into the end of a makeshift bench beside the open doorway to intensive care. The little girl plays with a doll. She sits on her father's knee, his arms in a loose circle surrounding her, embracing her. Their glances turn from the fireman and dart to the television screen on the wall facing the bench. An hourly news update begins. This time shows is 11 o'clock. The date, Monday, September 14th, 2011. A reporter from one of the main Spanish stations speaks to camera against a background of rescue workers, the wrecked remains of train carriages, a crane, ambulances and police cars. Whatever she says is lost in the hum of noise in the room. The picture changes and a heading flashes up which says CCTV. The time in the corner is 8 o'clock, 3 hours ago. The replay begins. The screen shows a long silver train picking up speed, snaking along the tracks as it approaches a curve before a bridge. And by now, several people have gathered in front of the television. They watch the slow movement as the front of the train comes off the tracks, rears in the air, a moment before it twists and hangs over the edge of the bridge. The engine and the first 2 carriages swing in a slow arc for a few beats before detaching from the rest of the train and dropping below the line of the camera. The next carriage flips on its side and sways over the bridge, held only by the rest of the train still on the tracks. The viewers can see inside the carriage through a jagged, gaping hole left by the carriages that have torn away and dropped out of sight. The children and their grandfather hold their hands over their mouths until the shot of a woman's face comes into view. On the slanting floor of the carriage, which balances out over the edge of the bridge, she struggles to stay inside. The family stares at the white shirt and black skirt the woman wears, stark against the muddied colours of the wreckage. In the soundless picture, after a glance downward, the family watches her fighting to keep hold of a seat. In the next shot, she appears to lose her grip and begins to slide. "Mama!" the little girl calls and points to the television, her father shushing her, burying his face in her hair. Dark-haired and heavy-set, the woman's efforts to hold on could be seen in her movements and her grim expression, but still she stays inside. She manages to turn and lie face down, her right arm extended, her hand grasping the long, narrow strap of a bag. Soon she'll be out through the torn, gaping hole. Smoke is filling the carriage and the two children cry as they watch her. As the smoke clears briefly, they see that the woman is still there, but her feet are hanging outside the opening. Then the black shoe on her left foot drops off and disappears, and after a few seconds, the right shoe follows. The girl pushes her little fist into her mouth and muffles her sobs. By now, the waiting area is quieter and people stand in front of the television screen. When a huddle of people block the family's view, they shrink back and lower their heads, except for the little girl who peeps through the crowd. Each and every watcher holds their breath as the smoke blurs the picture for a moment. Then a second, slight, fair-haired woman comes into view along the floor of the carriage, grabbing at a seat. She manages to pull herself up tight against it and finally lies on her stomach across the angled armrest. Several of the watchers murmur prayers. They peer as she moves one hand down to a pocket, pulls out a phone and then brings it to her ear. They watch her lips move as she speaks, until she drops her chin, her face hidden from view. The other woman clings to the strap. The screen clouds over, and when it next clears, a fireman, secured by a halter, is lowering himself flat along the floor. Even from a distance, his expression is intense, his features taut. He appears young. As he is winched further down and comes level with the slim woman on the seat, he pauses. She gives him a thumbs up and the briefest of smiles. He reaches over, pats her shoulder, and continues down the sloping floor. For an instant, the fireman can be seen lying on his back, wrapping a rope around the waist of the woman in the black and white skirt. In the next shot, the two of them are inching up away from the yawning hole. Billowing smoke covers the three figures, but when it moves, the watchers see the woman's bare feet clear off the edge and further back into the carriage. The little group stand motionless in front of the television. Some weep or embrace. Others stare at the two figures as an unseen hand pulls them up slowly. Then a sudden cry goes up throughout the waiting area. The carriage gives a jolt to the left. The firefighter grips the rope tighter, but just then the fair-haired woman hurtles past him at speed, down the carriage floor towards the jagged opening, still clutching the seat. He makes a grab and catches the armrest. He looks across at the woman, grasping the armrest with his right hand, and then the tips of his fingers while he grimaces, clenches his teeth and tries to rebalance his hold on the first woman. The smoke returns, but when it moves off, the seat is gone and there are only two figures left. The fireman's mouth is wide open as he watches downwards, reaching out an empty right hand. His expression echoes around the room on the faces staring at the screen, and he wraps both arms tighter around the remaining woman. The knot of people turn away and shuffle back to other parts of the room. "Mama," the child with the chestnut hair waves at the woman being hauled up by the fireman. The firefighter still stands by the intensive care unit, his back to the screen. He has been staring at the patient on the third trolley from the door. He studies her and follows the lines on her monitor. The crowd behind him has moved away from the television. The nurses are manoeuvring in and out between the beds. He catches one nurse's eye and points to the woman. The nurse looks at him and frowns. She walks over. "Are you looking for someone?" she asks. "Is she going to be okay?" He gestures to the patient on the third trolley again. Her expression is puzzled. She looks at his face and glances over in the direction of the television. "She's doing well. It's thanks to you, isn't it?" She smiles. "What's your name?" She speaks in a low voice and mouths her family, signalling with the turn of her head towards the four people on the bench. "Mama, Mama!" The little girl is waving at him, showing him her doll. The boy sees him too and he tugs on his father's sleeve and then points. The fireman wipes his forehead, turns and works his way through the waiting room to the exit, but by then, people begin to notice him. Word flies through the small crowded area. By the time he gets to the door, people are touching him, patting him. Women hold his hand. He eases his arms free with a gentle murmur and backs out the door. Still they pursue him, calling, "Angel, Angel." He returns to the station from the emergency department, has a hot shower, finishes his report and goes for sleep. Already, the fair-haired woman is in his dreams, sliding past him, calling out and asking for help. He wakes on his bunk, reaching out his right hand into thin air, his scalp wet with sweat. He knows he'll have to turn up for a counselling session the following morning. After 15 years in the service, he knows what the counsellor will say or encourage him to say about his feelings. He never describes what the faces of grieving relatives or the sight of car crash victims do to him. He never wants to say out loud how he feels when they arrive too late at a fire, of not being able to save anyone. No counselling can stop the lost and dead following him for months when he sleeps until, finally, he always finds some sort of peace. He sees their faces, but they no longer suffer or reach out to him. He turns on his laptop and opens a letter from a folder named Work. He reads, May 5th, 2010. Dear Senor Ruiz, after 14 years serving with the finest men and women in Spain, it is with sincere regret that I find that I must offer my resignation from the Region's Fire Service. He scans the document and deletes May 5th, 2010. He retypes the date. Now it reads September 14th, 2011. Next, he changes 14 to 15. He sighs. Over the last 5 years, he has revised this letter twice. He'll finish it in the morning and print it out.